Once upon a time, there was a man named Prigozhin. He was referred to as a true patriot by Alexei Dumin, a former Putin bodyguard turned regional governor. Dumin believed that even though there may have been mistakes and cowardice, betrayal was an unforgivable sin. Prigozhin and his fighters of Wagner were not traitors in his eyes. But not everyone shared the sentiment. Some saw Prigozhin as more of a problem than a traitor. They believed that Prigozhin hadn't truly betrayed Putin because he didn't align himself with Ukraine or NATO. Prigozhin's actions may have caused political complications, but he wasn't a real traitor in Soldatov's eyes. The complex tale of Prigozhin reached its climax on the 23rd of August 2023, when his plane tragically crashed to Earth, closing a chapter marked by his struggles to maintain his operations in Africa. It seemed as though Prigozhin could have challenged Putin's authority and lived to tell the tale. But maybe Putin was just taking his time to assess the situation, evaluating the damage caused by Prigozhin's actions. The Russian leader was in no rush to seek vengeance. After all, the Wagner PMC was only a fraction of Prigozhin's arsenal. He had the power to topple governments in Africa and was responsible for many local militias in the area. Replacing such a man is no easy task, even for Papa, as Prigozhin endearingly called Putin. Russian television, with its strategic propaganda, downplayed Prigozhin's death, prioritizing Putin's virtual attendance at the BRICS summit and the war reports from Ukraine. They were avoiding the most obvious explanation for Prigozhin's demise, preferring instead to focus on his achievements during the war and how his death was unfavorable for the government. Not only did the Kremlin distance itself from Prigozhin's death, but they also worked to smooth over the conflict between Prigozhin and Putin. They downplayed Putin's promises of retribution after the mutiny. The traitor label and the pledge of inevitable punishment were hardly discussed. The Russian government preferred to highlight Prigozhin's accomplishments and mourn his loss. Despite some nationalists and war hawks still idolizing Prigozhin, his popularity remained limited. His charismatic use of social media, however, gave him an almost folklore-like status in Russia, reminiscent of Donald Trump's appeal, but in a much more grotesque manner. Prigozhin had a grand plan, waiting for Russia's war efforts in Ukraine to falter once again. He hoped that his mercenaries would swoop in to save the day, mending his relationship with Putin in the process. It was a strategy that even in death could bolster his legacy. Marwa Gelman, an art collector and opposition politician, foresaw this possibility. If Ukraine gained ground, Prigozhin's legend would only grow. Some would paint him as a martyr. Mystical powers would surround his persona, and rumors of his survival would circulate. And so, this dramatic tale of Prigozhin, betrayal, politics, and the thirst for power continues to captivate those drawn into its web, leaving room for speculation and the creation of legends. In a 2018 documentary, Vladimir Putin answers instantly when asked if there is anything he cannot forgive. Betrayal, he says, with no hesitation. Yevgeny Prigozhin, who was killed in a probable assassination, held a similar belief. One of his fighters' tactics to punish deserters was to tape their heads to a block of concrete and then bludgeon them to death with a sledgehammer. The hammer became their symbol. For years, Prigozhin did the Kremlin's dirty work and sought to spread Russian influence and sow discord among its enemies around the globe. Putin offered Prigozhin some praise after his death, calling him a talented businessman who had made a significant contribution to the war against Ukraine. But Prigozhin's legacy inside Russia will come down to whether the former Putin ally will bear the mark of a traitor, a word that Putin used during the Wagner uprising in June, and others hinted at as the early eulogies poured in. In the heart of Leningrad, a city enshrouded in the shadow of the Soviet Union, a boy named Prigozhin came into this world on the first day of June in 1961. His early years unfolded in a turbulent atmosphere, where adversity became a constant companion. A fateful twist of destiny struck when his father met an untimely demise, leaving his mother with the daunting task of caring not only for him, but also for his ailing grandmother. Undaunted by the challenges, she toiled tirelessly in a local hospital as a nurse, providing the unwavering support that would become a cornerstone of Prigozhin's life. But as the pages of his life turned, they revealed darker chapters. November of 1979 marked a pivotal moment as the young Prigozhin found himself ensnared in the clutches of an unfortunate theft, resulting in a suspended sentence that hung heavily over his future. Yet, destiny had more trials in store. In the unforgiving grip of 1981, he was caught once again. A second theft, casting an even darker shadow. This time, the consequences were far graver. A 12-year sentence behind bars. A conviction laden with charges spanning robbery, fraud, and involvement of minors in criminal activities. The court rendered its judgment not only on Prigozhin, but also on his co-conspirators, united in their audacious burglary of affluent residences. For the next 9 years, the prison walls became his confidants, and the cold, unforgiving cells his dwelling. It was a period of solitude, reflection, and a battle for survival in the harshest of environments. It was only through a pardon in 1988 that the grip of confinement began to loosen. And finally, in the dawn of 1990, he emerged into the world once more, a free man, having spent nearly a decade behind the iron bars. The world had changed, but Prigozhin had transformed too. Those who crossed his path in the years to come would come to know him as a man driven by an unyielding determination, a man of immense talent who would stop at nothing to realize his ambitions. They would say of him, he is a force to be reckoned with, a man who won't back down when he sets his sights on something. Upon his return, he ventured into the world of hot dog selling with unwavering determination. He honed his craft of blending mustard, turning his family's tiny kitchen into a laboratory of flavors. In those early days, his earnings amounted to a monthly treasure of $1,000, a fortune in ruble notes that left his mother bewildered, struggling to count the abundance. He had literally crafted the secret sauce. But Prigozhin's dreams were far grander than the fast food realm he currently inhabited. He possessed a unique talent for cultivating powerful connections. A friend from the 1990s once described him as a relentless seeker of influential companions, an adept builder of rapport with those in higher echelons. Soon enough, he found himself entwined in a supermarket chain venture. In the year 1995, driven by ambition and a relentless spirit, Prigozhin embarked on a new adventure, joining forces with Tony Gare, a seasoned British hotel administrator whose illustrious career included a stint at the prestigious Savoy in London. Now he resided in one of St. Petersburg's exclusive luxury hotels. Prigozhin placed his trust in Gare to oversee the management of a modest wine shop, a partnership that would soon blossom into something more significant. Together they envisioned the old customs house, perched gracefully on the shores of St. Petersburg's Vasilievsky Island. Initially, this establishment employed a rather unconventional tactic, employing strippers to attract clientele. However, as whispers of the culinary delights inside grew louder, the strippers gradually made their exit. Gare dedicated himself to positioning the restaurant as the epitome of refined dining, capturing the hearts not only of pop stars and businessmen, but also the esteemed mayor of St. Petersburg, Anatoly Sobchak. He graced the establishment with his presence, often accompanied by his deputy, a man whose name would soon become synonymous with Russia's destiny, Vladimir Putin. Those who'd known him back then described him not as an ordinary employer, but as a man of exacting standards. Each dawn would find Prigozhin meticulously scrutinizing the establishment's cleanliness and unwavering dedication that bordered on obsession. With a precision that was almost artful, he even employed a specialized light projector to unearth the tiniest trace of dust hiding beneath the tables, leaving no room for compromise. The cleaners, under Prigozhin's watchful eye, were expected to execute their duties with nothing less than perfection. Amid the unfolding drama of the 1990s, Prigozhin, who had endured a decade-long prison sentence, preferred to shroud that chapter of his life in reticence. Instead, he wielded his charm as a potent tool, a magician of social adaptation who could seamlessly transform to please anyone when it served his interests. His enigmatic aura, combined with his ability to effortlessly navigate social circles, became a hallmark of his persona. But as Prigozhin continued his ascent, another figure was making waves on the grand stage of Russian politics. Vladimir Putin, now at the helm of Russia's presidency, frequently opted for his hometown of St. Petersburg as a backdrop for his diplomatic encounters. The old customs house, nestled on the banks of the Neva River, often played host to these high-stakes meetings. In other moments, Putin would find solace on Prigozhin's converted boat restaurant, New Island, a floating oasis of luxury that bore the mark of Prigozhin's ambition. In the shadow of these gatherings, the paths of two powerful men continued to intertwine, their destinies converging in a city that had witnessed the rise of empires and the forging of alliances throughout history. Prigozhin's upward trajectory continued to soar as he secured lucrative government contracts, all orchestrated through his holding company, Concord, a venture he had established during the 1990s. But his ambitions didn't stop there. They cast a wider net, aiming for the bountiful government supply contracts. In the annals of 2012, Russian media buzzed with reports that Prigozhin had clinched contracts worth a staggering 10.5 billion rubles, equivalent to 200 million pounds, to provide nourishment to the eager young minds in Moscow's schools, a fact duly recorded in the Russian financial registry. Then the geopolitical landscape underwent a seismic shift after Russia's annexation of Crimea in March 2014.
There's nothing subtle about what the Russians are doing here in Crimea.
Followed by its deepening involvement in eastern Ukraine. As the world watched with bated breath, Vladimir Putin vehemently denied the presence of regular Russian troops in these disputed territories.
This is nonsense. There are no Russian armed forces anywhere in the east of Ukraine.
Behind the scenes, the Kremlin embarked on a quest to establish plausible deniability, while private military companies remained on the wrong side of legality in Russia. A curious array of groups surfaced, seemingly in cahoots with the Ministry of Defense, yet maintaining a discreet distance. And in this clandestine world, Prigozhin's Wagner Group emerged as a rising star. The origins of this enigmatic outfit trace back to a pitch made by Prigozhin himself to Putin, a proposal that found favor with the Russian leader, cementing their relationship. Notably, a source within the defense ministry brushed aside speculations that Wagner was a brainchild of Russia's GRU, military intelligence, although it's possible that some GRU personnel offered counsel along the way. Prigozhin's reward was a parcel of land in the southern reaches of Molchino, Russia, gifted by the ministry. Here, shadowy companies associated with him embarked on a peculiar project, constructing a staging base cunningly masked as a children's camp. It wasn't until 2019 that Reuters shone a light on Prigozhin's alleged ties to the Molchino site. As the machinery of ambition veered on, this venture would only serve to stoke Prigozhin's insatiable hunger for wealth. In the shadowy corridors of power, Prigozhin's meteoric rise began to stir unease among high-ranking officials at the defense ministry, setting the stage for simmering tensions as his operations expanded. It was a time of uncertainty, a brewing storm on the horizon. But destiny had yet another pivotal moment in store for Prigozhin, one that would forever alter the course of his life.
It's been a game-changing couple of weeks in international relations over Syria.
In the waning days of 2015, the world watched as Vladimir Putin, the Kremlin's mastermind, made a fateful decision to unleash military might upon the embattled land of Syria, a nation torn asunder by conflict. The battered regime of Bashar al-Assad sought a savior, and Putin offered his hand.
So you would like to join the United States in the fight against ISIS. That's part of why you're there. Others think that while that may be part of your goal, you're trying to save the Assad administration because they've been losing ground and the war has not been going well for them. And you're there to rescue them.
Правильно, так и есть.
Well, you're right. We support the legitimate government of Syria.
It was in this crucible of chaos and violence that Prigozhin seized his opportunity. Contracts for food and supplies were signed, and the Wagner troops, Prigozhin's own private army, were dispatched to the heart of the war-torn country, Syria, a land of desolation and despair, would soon bear witness to the rise of a formidable and clandestine force. Wagner swiftly carved its name into the annals of history, a silent guardian of Moscow's ambitions in the Middle East. Operating in the shadows, these warriors were accused of unspeakable acts, their hands stained with the blood of war crimes. The world shuddered as disturbing videos emerged, revealing the gruesome truth. Individuals linked to Wagner, their faces hidden by masks, beheading and dismembering Syrian victims. The toll was devastating, but the extent of their losses was concealed, as the Kremlin officially denied their presence on Syrian soil. Yet Prigozhin's machinations extended beyond the realm of physical warfare. Allegations swirled that he commanded a legion of online trolls, initially tasked with shaping Kremlin narratives in the confines of domestic forums. However, their purpose would evolve, transforming into a weapon to disseminate Russian propaganda far beyond their homeland's borders. As the world grappled with the specter of Russian interference, a new chapter of Prigozhin's saga unfolded. The stage was set for a dramatic showdown on American soil.
Well, it wasn't a single attempt. They're doing it as we sit here, and they expect to do it during the next campaign.
In the midst of Robert Mueller's relentless investigation into Russia's intrusion in the 2016 US election, an indictment dropped like a bombshell, implicating Prigozhin and his shadowy web of affiliated companies. They were accused of orchestrating a clandestine network of pro-Donald Trump social media profiles, lurking within the digital shadows of Facebook and Twitter. These fabricated personas peddled pro-Trump content and even enticed unsuspecting Americans into unwittingly aiding their cause by purchasing equipment for rallies. Throughout this tumultuous period, Prigozhin remained a cryptic figure, shrouded in layers of secrecy. The indictment, however, hinted at his growing appetite for notoriety. Just days before his 55th birthday in May 2016, a peculiar event unfolded, an event that spoke volumes about the man behind the curtain. One of the fictitious American Facebook personas, a mere digital phantom, arranged for a genuine American citizen to stand outside the hallowed walls of the White House, a sign in hand. It read, "Happy 55th birthday, dear boss." The enigma of Prigozhin deepened, and the world watched with bated breath as his tale of intrigue and manipulation continued to unfold.
He is the person who does the dirty work for Putin.
As the dust settled on the withdrawn US indictment, Prigozhin, with a darkly poetic touch, seemed to indirectly acknowledge the allegations of electoral meddling in that fateful November. His admission was chilling, delivered with a macabre metaphor that sent shivers down the spines of those who dared to listen. "Gentlemen," he confessed, "we have interfered. We interfere, and we will continue to interfere. With utmost precision, we wield our influence, surgically, as only we can. In our targeted operations, we extract both kidneys and the liver simultaneously." But even as Prigozhin's empire expanded like a looming behemoth, it drew increasing scrutiny and a watchful world's gaze. Alexei Navalny, the fearless anti-corruption crusader and opposition figure, unleashed an investigation into the dark underbelly of Prigozhin's business dealings. His accusations were damning, claiming Prigozhin had manipulated Ministry of Defense contracts to fuel his opulent lifestyle. In a stunning revelation, Navalny's associate Lyubov Sobol exposed Prigozhin's children's opulence on Instagram, a digital breadcrumb trail that led to the heart of the Mughals' wealth. Pictures flaunted lavish possessions, including a private jet. With this crucial information in hand, they unmasked the enigmatic holding company concealing Prigozhin's extensive riches. But their quest for truth was not without peril. Sobol and her comrades took to the skies with a drone, hovering over the ostentatious residences believed to be owned by Prigozhin and his daughter. The drone's lens uncovered surreal luxuries, a helipad and a basketball court amidst the opulence. Yet their daring expose would not go unanswered. Intimidation and acts of aggression reared their ugly heads. Sobol's husband, a victim of a sinister attack, was injected with a mysterious needle outside their home, leaving him crumpled and incapacitated. Subsequently, Sobol found herself trapped in a web of relentless legal pressure and intimidation. Shadowy figures surveilling her every move whenever she dared to step outside. Russian journalists who dared to peel back the layers of Prigozhin's operations faced their own share of threats and terror, direct consequences of their fearless pursuit of truth. In the wake of a damning investigation by Novaya Gazeta in 2018, the newspaper's editorial office received a grotesque package, an eerie message in the form of a severed ram's head. The courageous journalist responsible for the expose found a chilling token on his doorstep, a funeral wreath silently declaring the cost of his relentless pursuit. But perhaps in the most shocking chapter in this tale of darkness unfolded in the heart of the Central African Republic in 2018. 3 Russian journalists embarked on a perilous journey to investigate Wagner's enigmatic activities. What awaited them was a meticulously planned and coordinated ambush, a deadly dance of shadows. The strings, it was whispered, led back to a Russian security instructor with deep ties to Wagner. Prigozhin steadfastly denied any role in these sinister killings. By this juncture, Prigozhin's reach extended far and wide, casting its ominous shadow over at least 10 African nations. His offerings spanned the spectrum security services, arms training, mining rights, and lucrative business prospects. The world watched, aghast, as Prigozhin's empire of shadows continued its inexorable expansion. From an unassuming office nestled on the St. Petersburg's Vasilyevsky Island, Prigozhin weaved his global web, a shadowy empire with roots tracing back 2 decades to a humble beginning in the restaurant business, side by side with Tony Gear. Within the clandestine chambers of his operation, Marah Gabidolin, a commander of the enigmatic Wagner Group, served as a bridge between the theater of war in Syria and Prigozhin's headquarters. Gabidolin's daily updates painted a chilling picture, an atmosphere dominated by fear. Prigozhin, though displaying a certain care toward his battle-scarred military commanders, harbored a darker side. Office workers felt the lash of his contempt, subjected to his ruthless and public humiliations. Intriguingly, Prigozhin held no official government position, yet he wove himself seamlessly into high-level meetings, particularly those tied to defense contracts. In a clandestine gathering between Vladimir Putin and the president of Madagascar, Harry Rajonari Mampianina, inside the Kremlin's hallowed halls in April 2018. Prigozhin's presence was shrouded in secrecy. However, just 2 short months after this clandestine encounter, Putin, in a surprising twist, distanced himself from Prigozhin's shadowy dealings in foreign policy. During an interview with Austrian television, the Russian leader casually referred to Prigozhin as a mere St. Petersburg restaurateur, likening him to George Soros, the enigmatic financier and philanthropist, enveloped in conspiracy theories. Soros had long been accused by Russian officials of fueling revolutions on behalf of the US government. Putin's analogy was clear. Prigozhin served as his covert instrument of foreign meddling, mirroring what he believed Soros did for the United States, all while maintaining plausible deniability. However, the tides of politics can change swiftly. Putin's decision to launch a full-scale assault on Ukraine in February of the previous year rendered the need for plausible deniability obsolete. After years of vehemently denying any connection to the Wagner Group, Prigozhin made a brazen announcement in September. He proudly declared himself the founder of the enigmatic force, tracing its origins back to 2014. This revelation followed a viral video leak, a production likely orchestrated by Prigozhin's inner circle. In the video, he pitched an audacious offer to inmates, tempting them with the opportunity to fight in Ukraine while behind bars. A stark truth hung over the pitch, likely death on the front lines. Yet, Prigozhin dangled a tantalizing carrot before them. Survive 6 harrowing months, and they would earn not only a full pardon, but also substantial compensation for their dire service to his covert ambitions. Within the prison's grim confines, the name Prigozhin took on an unexpected reverence. One inmate, casting his mind back to Prigozhin's visit, whispered, "In the end, he's one of us." In the shadow of incarceration, trust in Prigozhin surpassed faith in the authorities themselves, for his whispered promises held the key to their long-craved freedom. Far from the prison walls, in the world of geopolitics, a startling revelation emerged. Mikhailo Podolyak, an advisor to Ukraine's president Volodymyr Zelensky, brought dark tidings. Wagner, the shadowy force, had cast its net far and wide, recruiting over 38,000 prisoners with a harrowing toll. 30,000 souls lost, wounded, captured, or vanishing into the abyss. Podolyak condemned Wagner's actions as nothing short of a genocide perpetrated upon Ukraine. The newly minted recruits, mere pawns in Prigozhin's grand game, found themselves expendable, thrust into the fiery crucible of the front lines. Prigozhin, determined to showcase his forces as more capable than the regular Russian army, cared little for their fate. Former Wagner commander Gabidulin unraveled the tales of an ultra-strict discipline when narrated by Prigozhin, an iron grip that allegedly extended to executing those who dared to defy orders. Another former commander, Andrei Medvedev, bore witness to this dark reality, recounting firsthand knowledge of at least 10 such killings during his service near Bakhmut. In the convoluted realm of convict conscripts, surviving the grueling 6-month deployment at the front became the elusive key to freedom and wealth. Prigozhin's audacious call resonated, urging top Russian universities to extend scholarships to these battle-hardened souls. Murmurs among Russian officials even suggested that ex-prisoners could ascend to the hallowed halls of parliament. It was a remarkable transformation for Prigozhin, a man who had once shared the same shackles of incarceration, now orchestrating the release and rehabilitation of thousands, even those tainted by heinous crimes. Some believed that this was an endeavor to reshape the Russian identity within the crucible of wartime. In this narrative, prisoners became a cherished part of the nation, while the cosmopolitan elites opposing the war, including some of Putin's oligarchs, stood as outsiders. Yet Prigozhin's ambitions knew no bounds. In his audacious critique, he lashed out against alleged traitors within the elite who dared to vacation abroad and dream of Russia's defeat in the war. He portrayed a landscape where many within Putin's administration sought to bow before Uncle Sam. In this complex dance, Prigozhin emerged as the leader of an anti-elite movement within Putinism. A paradoxical figure, simultaneously loyal to the leader and critical of those encircling him. Despite his staggering wealth, Prigozhin had long cast himself as the champion of the common people. Locked in a ceaseless battle against the elites, this image persisted, untouched by the veneer of riches. Yet as Prigozhin's critiques escalated, shadows of doubt crept in. Sources from the Russian political elite hinted at unease. Figures within the Federal Security Service began to view him as a threat to the very constitutional order. They feared that, post-war, Prigozhin and his followers would clamor for political rewards, armed with their powerful private military force that operated beyond the state's grasp. Whispers of Prigozhin's overreach grew louder. His tirades accusing the defense ministry of seeking to steal his victory in Solidar seemed at times more a manifestation of vulnerability than strength. Insiders peeled back the layers, revealing the symbiotic relationship between Wagner and the defense ministry. Prigozhin himself in the grand theater of power remained shackled to Putin's favor. His operations dependent on the leader's continued blessing. Prigozhin did not grasp the concept of restraint, fully cognizant of animosity festering within the system. He had become a prisoner of his own ambitions. His relentless forward march had no reverse gear, for to halt now would mean his own undoing. He was trapped, propelled forward by an inexorable force, with no escape from his destiny. For years, Yevgeny Prigozhin had stood as an unwavering pillar of support for Russian President Vladimir Putin, a shadowy figure lurking in the Kremlin's periphery. Yet, the winds of change had begun to rustle through the halls of power. For Prigozhin's allegiance had taken a startling twist. In recent months, he had ventured into uncharted territory, veering away from direct criticism of Putin, while daring to question the very foundations of Russia's military endeavors. It was a gamble that set in motion a chain of events that would eventually cost him his life. With audacious resolve, Prigozhin dispatched his forces to seize Rostov-on-Don, a formidable military bastion, and set Wagner convoys on a course towards the hallowed heart of Moscow itself. Putin, the master puppeteer, could not remain idle. He mobilized the Russian war machine, declaring Prigozhin's audacious move an armed rebellion that could not go unanswered. But just when the world held its breath, a surprising figure emerged from the wings. Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko, a staunch Putin ally. In an astonishing twist, he stepped in to negotiate a halt to the advancing Wagner forces. Prigozhin said that his armed mutiny was meant to save Putin from the military, who he claimed were hiding truths about the conflict and embezzling money from the war effort. But Prigozhin also clearly overstepped the line, denouncing Putin's own invasion of Ukraine, saying on social media that the war wasn't for demilitarizing or denazifying Ukraine. It was needed for Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu to receive an extra star. The brutal reality is that from the moment Prigozhin's uprising was called treason, he was a marked man. Describing Prigozhin as a traitor meant consequences were inevitable. Otherwise, a system built on informal principles and practices rather than formal institutions risked becoming unmanageable. While in the eyes of Russia's defense ministers, they have eliminated the leader of a potential military or armed opposition in the future, hoping that it would reinforce trust within the military. Some of Putin's closest confidants have offered deliberately vague assessments of his legacy. Prigozhin was a man who had danced on the edge of loyalty and betrayal, and his death was met with little sympathy from the Russian elite. But this tale goes deeper, entwining itself with the dark underbelly of the nation's military hierarchy. Prigozhin had dared to raise his voice against Russia's military leadership, openly criticizing and demanding the dismissal of high-ranking figures. He brazenly referred to the upheaval as the March of Justice, a euphemism for the insurrection that had shaken the very foundations of the Kremlin. He insisted it wasn't the Kremlin that was a target, but rather Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu and Chief of the General Staff Valery Gerasimov. In truth, the Wagner mutiny had been a direct affront to President Putin's authority, an audacious challenge that sent shockwaves through the Kremlin. Even President Putin himself acknowledged that the Russian state had been funding Wagner, but loyalty had eluded the grasp of monetary influence. If this was a calculated act of vengeance by those in power, it sent a chilling message to Prigozhin's loyalists and anyone else contemplating armed resistance. Don't even think about it. Witness the fate of those who dare to defy. These messages hinted at the potential for Putin's domestic strength to emerge unscathed from this tumultuous chapter. However, a darker question loomed. Could Mr. Prigozhin become a martyr? Would those who had once sworn allegiance to him, skilled warriors in their own right, rise in the name of vengeance? Grey Zone, a mysterious telegram channel entangled with Wagner's web, pointed an accusatory finger at Russian traitors for Mr. Prigozhin's reported death. It left the identity of these supposed traitors shrouded in enigma, their intentions unclear. In a Russia steeped in secrecy and whispers, suspicions of foul play surrounding this crash hardly raised an eyebrow. Speculation had swirled ever since the mutiny, questioning whether Mr. Prigozhin's actions would ever be forgiven. He must have been aware of the risks. Yet in recent weeks, as he crisscrossed the skies in his private jet, he seemed to consider air travel a trivial concern. He rejected Putin's direct offer to reintroduce the Wagner troops in Ukraine without him, and even held his own private summit, parallel to the Russia-Africa summit in St. Petersburg. Although some African leaders were hesitant in being photographed with him, lest they incur Putin's wrath, they had no problem with off-the-record talks. Most of us following the story were perplexed when Prigozhin posted a video of him, his first since the March of Justice mutiny, where he seemed to be in high spirits, confident in continuing his work in Africa and making the life of terror groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda hell. Perhaps he believed himself too formidable, too indispensable, a figure in modern Russia to be erased from the stage of history.
По поводу предательства Родины президент глубоко ошибся. Мы патриоты своей Родины. Мы воевали и воюем. Все бойцы ЧВК «Вагнер».